Delighted to welcome Tory MP for North West Leicestershire, Andrew Bridgen, to the show. Good morning to you, Andrew.
Good morning, Julia. Can you hear me?
I can hear you just fine. Thank you very much indeed. Let's talk, if we can, first about the various different issues regarding the vaccine. Now, we know that there's been a big hoo-ha in the media about this AstraZeneca jab and being less effective on the South African variant. It's been made very clear from the Oxford researchers that they're going to develop a jab which we can get this autumn, which will deal with the South African variant. And so even though right now the current vaccine isn't so efficacious, doesn't prevent minor illness from this particular variant, we will be able to deal with it. But there is a concern that we will end up with vaccine passports, that people who've had a vaccine will be able to not just perhaps travel abroad to various countries, but also to access, say, going to the pub or going to a mass gathering or not. Do you think that's the route we should go down?
No, I don't. I just want to come back on the AstraZeneca. I mean, we should reassure your listeners that it might not be, even when they're not 100% effective or even 70% effective, all the tests are showing that they're preventing serious illness, hospitalisation and death. So even if the efficacy is dropping against some of these variants, what they are going to do, having that vaccine is going to protect you from serious illness, hospitalisation and death. So, but no, I'm completely against mandatory vaccine passports. I completely understand if you want to travel to a country and their rules are, if you come to our country, you've got to show us evidence that you've had the COVID-19 vaccine, probably a vaccine that we've tested or is on the approved list. I completely understand that. I mean, we've had that for a while. Julia, I travelled 2 years ago to Ghana, and you have to show proof that you've had the yellow swamp fever jab before you can go in there. I'd actually had it probably 30 years ago, but I hadn't got proof of it, so I had to go and have it again. It wasn't as unpleasant the second time, but I mean that's a fact of life. But if we end up having to take a proof that we've had the vaccine to go to the pub or a restaurant, I mean that will be a new world of horrors for me, and I think a huge infringement of civil liberties. And the chances then of ever getting back to any sort of normality will be zero.
Well, this is it, because lots of people who really had enough of lockdowns were, including many people many MPs who'd voted against the second lockdown in November, voted for this lockdown on the basis that the vaccine was a game changer. This would get us back to normal as soon as the people who are most at risk of dying of COVID, people over 70, that they were vaccinated. Then we would start coming out of lockdown, and that would be, back to normal life. The goalposts seem to shift constantly, whether it's over 70s, whether it's there is the second dose, whether it's over 50s, whether it's the entire adult population, whether it's hospitals being overwhelmed with people who are simply sick rather than actually very tragically dying of COVID, whether it's long COVID. The goalposts seem to shift every week. In a week's time, the government is, in all likelihood, going to reach its target of having all almost 15 million people who are in the over 70 age bracket and most vulnerable people in that age bracket vaccinated. At that point, should we immediately start hearing about the exit strategy and begin the move to actually get back to some semblance of normality?
Well, the government is doing a cracking job on rolling out the vaccine, and they are almost certainly going to hit the target of the top 4 vulnerable groups by the middle of February. They're well on target for that. What I can tell you is that the Prime Minister is going to make an announcement on the 22nd of February, so probably within a week or so of hitting that top 4 group target, and he's going to lay out how we're going to come out of the lockdown, and for many people that will be none too soon. Clearly, I think we all agree that the most important thing is to get children back to school. I think most parents would agree with that.
That's a month away, Andrew. That's a month away.
Yes, but you've got to remember, Julia, that we're still a week away from hitting the target of the top 4 vulnerable groups. And for those who've had the vaccine in the last week or so, and it's going to take another 3 weeks for that vaccine to take full effect before they're going to get fully protected. So I would hope that we can get all the schools open in March, And
How
also,
about, no, wait, hold on a minute. How about, I mean, okay, the people who I think quite wrongly argue against the Great Barrington Declaration and say you couldn't possibly, shield the older population. How about everyone who's over 70, who's had the jab, how about they literally, like, we will deliver your shopping, and then you don't come out of your house, you don't see anyone else at all until, and even if we have care home workers, all right, they'll move it, whatever it is, for those 2 weeks, and then we get the kids back to school. My daughter's got a whole bunch of grandparents in their 70s. She's not seeing any of them. I'm not seeing any of them because I'm with my daughter. I mean, it is perfectly possible for children to be back at school and for people over 70 waiting for their vaccine to start working to not see them and not see anyone else who could be at risk to them. And why do millions of children have to suffer not being at school, not being able to socialise, not having a normal life, all the problems they've got, because so that 70-year-olds who can quite easily stay at home can have that extra couple of weeks? It just seems to be wrong to me.
Well, I'm not sure that all 70-year-olds would like you speaking on their behalf.
I didn't.
Julia.
I wasn't speaking on their behalf.
Well,
Most 70-year-olds I know would perfectly happily have kids back at school.
We're kicking off about an authoritarian state, and you're telling me I've got to tell all 70-year-olds you've got to stay in your house.
Sorry, you've told 67 million people to stay in their house.
Yeah, but then you're going to say just this one group. You're going to have to stay.
Yes, the group who died from the virus. Yes,
we've got half term coming up, haven't we? We've got half term coming up. That's all scheduled. We go back after half term, and we get the youngest children back, and those who've probably got exams this year.
No, Andrew, that's not what's going to happen. Do you not keep up to date with what your own government is? After half term,
well, we're not going to know until the 22nd of February.
We are going to know.
We're not going to know.
No, I'm sorry, Andrew. I do apologise for knowing more about government policy than a Tory MP. Nicola Sturgeon has said schools in Scotland will start going back on the 22nd of February. Okay, 22nd of February. Yes, your Prime Minister has said
8th of March
that on the 22nd of February he will announce what's happening. He's going to give 2 weeks' notice to schools going back. So the 8th of March. So that's 8th of March is not straight after half term. That's 2 weeks after half term. That's in a month's time.
And that's giving time for the last people in the vulnerable groups. And some of the over 65s will be.
Why can they not stay home while children go back to school?
Ask the Prime Minister. Ask the Prime Minister.
But I'm making a fair point, aren't I?
Well, you are talking about potentially. Then you're talking about 15 million people will have to be locked down.
Not locked down. They, for their own safety, stay home so that children can go to school.
And what happens at the households where the over 70s are still in the house with the children? We're multi-generational house.
We have empty hotels all around the country.
Yes, to sort that out is a logistical nightmare.
Well, you can do it for quarantining people coming in from the country, from the other countries.
We can't even manage to keep asylum seekers in a camp without them burning it down. They have to move them all over the place.
If someone over 70 is in a household with children, then either that child cannot go to school, and by the way, that's a tiny percentage of over 70s, or those over 70s could be given the finances to go move in somewhere else so they can be on their own and they cannot be at risk. That is not beyond the wit of man.
Well, in the time we've got now, you think that the government will be able, with everything else they're doing as well, would have the resources to find all the multi-generational households, all those, and then move them out into other accommodations.
Yes, all those children of those households can stay on Zoom lessons.
Would you like us to move them?
I'm trying to say this is what we should have been doing from March last year, but there we are. I just find it extraordinary that we are sacrificing an entire generation of children and young people because apparently it's so awful to ask 70-year-olds who are worried about their health to stay at home.
And what about university students as well? What are we going to do with those, Julia?
Well,
now you're running the country.
Well, if I was running the country, we wouldn't be in the mess we're in right now, Andrew.
Well, I'm not sure about that.
Well, tell you what. Given that we've got one of the worst death tolls in the world per capita, I mean, how well has it worked out, all this lockdown policy?
We've got various demographic reasons for that. We've got a lot of vulnerable old people who are vulnerable to respiratory diseases, as you know. I spoke to the Serbian ambassador. I'm chairman of the all-party parliament group for Serbia. I said, your figures are far better than us. Yet, you tell me your health service is in meltdown. And she said, well, we just haven't got the old people you've got.
Yeah.
And you go out to Africa, and you and I, Julia, would be very old.
Yeah,
Very old in
been to
Africa.
Africa many times. Yes, thank you. I think you'll find that our population isn't particularly older than most other countries in Western Europe, though. Just finally, let me ask you about the issue of ethnic minorities in poorer regions. Leicester is a city, obviously very much in the news last summer, of course, when they were basically put into their own version of lockdown.
Well, they've never been out. They've never been out
Well,
of it
exactly.
since March.
You actually represent a more rural area, but there is a very high ethnic minority population. Should there, as many people are saying, should there be emphasis on making sure that more jabs are carried out in areas where people are poorer and where there are larger ethnic minority populations? Should that be a priority?
Well, I think the priority is the list in priority of the top 9 down to the over 50s. I mean, that's been drawn up by the scientists, and that catches vulnerable groups between 16 and 64 in there. I think it's group 6. What is important is that we spread the message to ethnic minorities that it is safe to have the vaccine. What we do know is that 91% of the people, 85% of people are taking the vaccine. That is brilliant compared to the rest of Europe and the rest of the world. But 91% of those people are white. We also know that black and ethnic minority populations are more likely to have a severe bout of the illness if they contract it. And historically, the problem with vaccination scepticism is, it's promoted by government, and some people probably quite rightly don't trust governments, and also it's big pharmaceutical companies, and some people don't trust big pharmaceutical companies. So you've got a perfect storm on that one. Well, let's look at it. It's probably going to be AstraZeneca. This is produced basically for nothing, so it's £3 a shot. It was done for charity. It's not big pharma making big money out of it, and the science is there. We've all seen what's been on the news. We've seen the death rates. Let's get this sorted. And those black and ethnic minority. I mean, any leader spreading absolute hokum pokum that it's got various extracts of whatever in there that make it unsuitable for that religion is absolute rubbish. And listen to the scientists.
Okay, Andrew Bridgen, Tory MP for North West Leicestershire. Thank you very much. 7:20 is the time.